In this video, we're going to look at how statistics can be manipulated to deceive people, how they frequently are. I've noticed a few things. First of all, that people that haven't had the chance to take an actual course in statistics or don't have a background in science or math are somewhat disadvantaged in knowing what to believe when it comes to studies. And it's not their fault, but I've heard individuals quote studies to support a claim or a belief, but then when that study is seen to be flawed or another study contradicts it, they will be just as quick to say that statistics are unreliable, claiming maybe that statistics is a field based in probability theory, emphasis on the word theory, so it's not as reliable as the rest of math. I want to address those really quick, and I'm going to bring in lots of ideas, or a few ideas from related areas, not just pure statistics, but areas of formal logic and critical thinking. The word theory in science is much different than the way it's used in common vernacular. A theory is high praise. It means that something has stood the test of time and continues to explain things effectively. Now, religion, which, as far as I can tell, is not falsifiable. It confirms only. So you have a belief and you look for evidence that confirms it rather than evidence that disproves it. Science is entirely falsifiable, and that's why a theory is never an absolute truth, because it's never to the point where nothing will change my mind. Something that contradicts it tomorrow and disproves it will render it uh, false, and you discard it, or you adapt it to explain things better, or you find something else. Now, the other claim that it's not reliable. Imagine it's kind of like using a tool that you're not familiar with. Maybe you're given a hammer and you don't know how to use a hammer, and you try to use it to saw through a 2x4. And after it doesn't work, you claim that hammers are unreliable. Well, the problem obviously is that you don't know how to use a hammer correctly. Now, if you're a skilled carpenter, you can clearly see how people are misusing tools. Um, so the purpose of this video is to highlight key elements of how studies are done correctly, how data sets are compared incorrectly, what insufficient sample size is, and how common language can actually be statistical in nature, even though it doesn't seem like it, and what to look for in claims made. So we're going to look at two examples from Jehovah's Witnesses and one example of a study that was done incorrectly that had a huge impact on the world. I chose this one specifically to highlight the danger, the irresponsibility of experts in using studies that are poorly done because they deceive people into thinking harmful ideas. The first example is more of a general example of what to look for in basically propaganda. If you are a witness or were at one point, you can't look at me with a straight face and say that Watchtower doesn't discourage college, university, higher education. And this is just part of that subliminal programming, this article. Now, there are a few things to point out. While quote mining and plagiarism will get their own video because of how frequently Watchtower does those things, I will mention it because this is a gold mine of quote mining right here. And this might not seem like a statistical claim, but it is in a way. It uses the word many. It's drawing a connection while not specifically saying it in this sentence. Again, when you take into, if you keep up with the magazines, the broadcasts, assemblies and conventions, like I mentioned, this is just part of that programming that learning a trade is much better than going to college, and college is bad. It brainwashes you. It's part of Satan's system. Um, and so it's drawing a connection between many countries that have high unemployment with a shortage of skilled workers. If you watch, I don't remember which broadcast it was, but Garrett Loosh, he used a straw man argument against higher education by quoting this probably made up college student, but this college student said that he went to college to become basically rich and famous, and then Loesch basically pointed out that that's not the type of attitude we should have, therefore college is bad, totally misrepresenting what many people go to college for. I am myself a college student, and I can tell you that that's not anywhere close to why I went. It was so that I don't have to be 70 years old doing manual labor or having arthritis climbing up ladders as one of the reasons. But anyway, a couple of other points to highlight just about being skeptical of the information that you're given and that you read. William Davis was never the Premier of Ottawa, Canada. He was the Premier of Ontario, Canada, first of all. Not that that's a big deal, but look at how fragmented the quoting is. Our attitude toward the skilled trades, that's all he said. And then they add, is partially responsible for the gap between available jobs and skilled laborers. Then this viewpoint is seen in the prevalent opinion that, and then quoting him again, parents are making an error. That's it. If they do not send their children to college. And then all jobs are relevant, he said further, and people becoming competent in technical fields make valuable contributions to the community. So very little, if this is actually, these things are actually what he said, which there's no sources cited or reference section, there's no parenthetical citations to verify any of this. But if those are what he actually said, um, he didn't even say most of what they're representing his claims as. And so this is an example of quote mining, misrepresenting sources, not even supporting the sources, not being able to verify it, unsubstantiated claims, and then subliminal programming that college or learning a trade is much better than college. The second example from Jehovah's Witnesses is a purely statistical fallacy that I'll address, and this highlights the danger of thinking correctly about statistics, what the actual comparisons that are being made between data sets, insufficient comparisons, and so on. So it makes the claim. Now, just as a background for this example, as in any high control group, Jehovah's Witnesses have the idea that everyone outside of the group is in darkness, especially moral darkness. That marriages are constantly falling apart, people are killing each other, um, as if without Watchtower, um, you're just ready to kill the first person you see or commit rape or something else. It, so, like the previous example about subliminal programming supporting the idea that college is bad, this example is just a little piece in the programming that the morality in the group is superior to outside the group. Now, it makes the claim in some countries one marriage out of every two or three ends in divorce. Now, let's just stop there for a second. In some countries, it doesn't say which countries, this is not verifiable. One marriage out of every two is much different than one in every three. So it's very broad, but then it's comparing the 1 out of every 2 or 3 in some countries to only 4.9% of witnesses are divorced or separated. Now, there's a problem here. There are a few problems actually, but first of all, the statistics in some countries is being compared to, I assume, the global statistics of Jehovah's Witnesses. Um, it's kind of implied there. It doesn't specifically say it, but only 4.9% of the witnesses are divorced or separated from their mates. So it's a generalization. So they're not the same for a number of reasons. The second reason that they're not comparable is because one marriage out of every, let's go with every two, 50%, end in divorce compared to the 4.9 of witnesses who are divorced or separated. So those are two completely different data sets, right? They're comparing the number of marriages that end in divorce compared to those 4.9 who are divorced. Um, Thirdly, it's not accurate. If we just look at Pew Research as one example, and there are other statistical groups where you can find the data from other countries, but this is just from the United States. We can see that the number who are divorced among Jehovah's Witnesses is 12%, and that's the same as mainline Protestant, Catholic, a little bit higher than Buddhist. Oh, let's see. Sorry, I was looking at the wrong. Yep, no, that's right. 10% of Buddhist, 12% of Catholic. The highest is Evangelical Protestant. Well, you can read the graph for yourself, but they're on the high side of average, right? There are groups that have smaller rates or lower rates, and this is just one year. But I've I keep up on this, and that's pretty much what it is every year. The Jehovah's Witnesses are pretty much like everybody else. Um, and I looked at how the study was done. It is a sample space of 15,000 with a margin of error of less than 1 percentage point. Um, so, and in other countries, it's about the same. The last example is taken from Dr. Mercola's website. If you're not familiar with him, he is a leading figure in the anti-vaccine movement and the alternative medicine community. And before you type in that comment section how I've been paid off by Big Pharma, just hear me out for a minute. A lot of the characteristics and traits of a cult are found in other areas as well. I'm not saying that there is a Mercola cult. What I'm saying is the manipulation of information is one of the key aspects of cult psychology. And when I was taking mathematical logic, one of our assignments was to pick apart published articles for fallacies and court cases to analyze the lawyers' arguments and so forth. It was a really fun exercise, but Mercola's articles um, were riddled with fallacies and unsubstantiated claims and so on. But I picked, and he's going to actually be included in the whole quote mining and plagiarism video that I'll do. He's this this is about statistics, and so I wanted to mention this because he mentions Dr. Wakefield right here. Andrew Wakefield. He was um, a doctor in the UK, and his paper that he published, which connected the MMR to gut health to autism. So there's a misconception. He wasn't necessarily directly connecting vaccines to autism, but he was connecting it to gut health to autism. So they are connected according to him, but not in such a direct manner. But anyway, look at the language here. Um, while this is an article, a video on statistics, I will point out the loaded language that Mercola uses for the anti-vaccine community, they also have an us versus them. And I'm not going to commit the fallacy of sweeping generalization here. Just because you eat organic vegetables doesn't mean you're anti-science or something like that. But the community in general is unhealthily skeptical of Western medicine. He was persecuted for more than a decade. And then, let's see, he was many decent, capable physicians and scientists have lost their careers because they dared to question the safety of a vaccine. So it's contributing to that paranoia that the somehow, well, anyway, you can draw your own conclusions there. But first of all, Dr. Wakefield was not persecuted and fired from his position because of questioning a vaccine. I want to go into how his study was actually done and show just how frightening it is to me how easily this can just go way out of control. There was even a documentary making him almost like a martyr. Um, but so Dr. Wakefield, he he found a connection in, it was either 11 or 12 children in the same city that that had autism and had the MMR vaccine. So there's the first problem. He had a sample space of about a dozen. Now, in general, the sample space matters greatly because the greater it is, the more accurate it will be. Now, there are exceptions to that. So there's actually a ceiling within small populations. If the percentage of the sample space is too high, you run the risk of biases because people know each other, they might be related, and other factors. But in general, you want a large enough sample space so that you're going to have an accurate representation. Secondly, so he found a connection in these dozen or so children. He didn't repeat the study. Thirdly, he was not a statistician. He wasn't even the right kind of doctor to be making this connection, but that's another issue. It doesn't even matter too much. But he had a competing product, which he says it wasn't a competing product, but in any event, there was financial interest. And so what should have been done is having a third party, a statistical group or an epidemiological group or something, not benefiting from the MMR causing poor gut health, causing autism and so forth, conducting the study and then repeating it in other countries on a larger scale. So after finding this connection in a dozen children in the same city, he published a paper, and then it took off, and a lot of the other doctors involved retracted from the study. And of course, that also feeds into the paranoia of the anti-vaccine community, because then it's a conspiracy, right? No, they probably just realized it was poorly done and they didn't want a part of it. Maybe not. I don't know. Maybe they were all bought out by big pharma, blah blah blah. But in any event, Dr. Wakefield conducted a poorly done study. That's all there is to it. So you can get into the conspiracy theories and everything else all you want, but it was still a poorly done study that had no place in scientific literature. So hopefully this video has been informative and has helped to highlight some of the aspects of what to look for in a study or a statistical claim. There's something called the Simpsons paradox, where you encounter two contradictory results because of not extrapolating the data. It's easy to resolve if you know what to look for, but it's very confusing if you don't. So just as an example of how a study can fool people quite easily. And so thanks for watching. Don't forget to click like and subscribe, and I'll see you next time.